So we just got through talking about in the last segment the way that Marjorie Taylor Greene played into the House hearing yesterday about the IRS whistleblowers, another one of these GOP organized hearings that didn't go too well for them. And we'll now have a chance to talk about that more broadly. If you're interested, if you're a YouTube segment viewer, you can of course find the Marjorie Greene segment on the YouTube channel. But as has been happening with these Republican organized hearings, things will be uncovered throughout the process of the hearing that directly contradict the very narrative that they're pushing. And it's always a very strange moment. And we have another example of that here, where the whistleblowers, as they're being called, seem to bring forward some information that doesn't exactly align with the narrative we've been hearing from Republicans about the so-called Biden crime family, corruption, and all of that. I'll get to the whistleblowers' specific grievances, and they are coming forward genuinely believing they have actual grievances, and then Republicans play their role of trying to bend it into something that it is not. I'll talk about that in a moment, but first, to kind of address the overarching narrative and some details that came out of this on that front that Republicans have been pushing about Joe Biden and his corrupt, according to them, involvement with Hunter Biden's business dealings. Well, these whistleblowers are coming forward because they are alleging some wrongdoing or some interference within the IRS investigation into Hunter Biden and his avoidance of paying taxes in certain years. Something we've talked about in the past, eventually led to a plea deal that was very typical for these types of potential charges. And individuals, these whistleblowers, as a part of the investigation to Hunter Biden, felt like David Weiss, the U.S. attorney, didn't have full authority over making decisions on the Hunter Biden case and bringing charges against Hunter Biden in particular locations. And what's interesting and why these whistleblowers to me just don't matter that much is because David Weiss, who's kind of the center of these accusations, is saying, no, I had complete authority. All is well. He's the one who would have been getting interfered with. And he himself has written a letter to some of these Republicans saying, no, I had authority. I made decisions to do what I did. If I needed to get special counsel status, I could have gotten it. Merrick Garland did not try to interfere because of who Hunter Biden was. No. And so what these whistleblowers are feeling, or what they feel like they observed or whatever, clearly actually didn't play a role, or didn't enough to bother David Weiss, who was the ultimate decision maker on this. And also, one of the big claims from Republicans was that Merrick Garland was being called out for lying under oath by one of these whistleblowers, but they themselves said, no, Merrick Garland, we're not accusing him of lying under oath about not getting involved in the Hunter Biden investigation. I know some of these can get kind of murky with all the details, but the interesting part of this, to me, is that as Democrats were kind of asking these individuals questions, we got some information about the connection or lack thereof between Biden and Hunter Biden's business dealings. As New York Times writes, Mr. Shapley, one of the whistleblowers, in fact, also told Congress that his investigation had uncovered some evidence that some of the claims of the elder Mr. Biden's involvement were mere wishful thinking. He told him in an interview conducted with Hunter Biden's business associate, Rob Walker, who told investigators that it was projection that former Vice President Biden would get involved in their business ventures. So the associate to Hunter Biden, when asked about this subject, was saying, listen, any statements that were made from Hunter Biden, something to this effect, in the text messages that are brought up where he's kind of talking about, I'm sitting next to my father and he has all these friends, and probably was just projection because Biden never actually got involved. That was probably Hunter Biden just trying to throw around his last name to help his business ventures, which admittedly rather annoying, and definitely kind of the benefit of having a famous last name and all of that. But the politically relevant part was Biden. Is Biden doing something, or did he do something that was incorrect? Joe Biden, that is. And that is what there's not evidence for. Quote, I certainly never was thinking at any time the VP was a part of anything we were doing, Mr. Walker said, according to Mr. Shapley. And then a little bit of the back and forth I have here for you with Representative Goldman asking one of these whistleblowers a question to this effect.
And Mr. Shapley, you also said in your testimony, and we've talked about this a bunch, that the agents were prohibited from pursuing leads related to Joe Biden and the big guy, but the agents did that anyway, right? Interviewing Rob Walker.
Agents interviewed Rob Walker.
And they asked him about that, right?
The word big.
Right. They didn't use the word big guy, but they asked about it in reference to that text. And do you recall that Rob Walker actually said in response to that he was not aware that Joe Biden was ever a part of anything that he and Hunter were doing?
That's what the witness said, yes.
Yes.
And when he posted this clip, Dan Goldman said, not only did today's witnesses once again provide no evidence connecting Joe Biden to any of Hunter Biden's business dealings, they actually had proof that he wasn't involved. Any insinuation from Republicans to the contrary intentionally ignores the testimony of their own witnesses. So as they were, even though they were really supposed to be focusing on the tax-related things when it comes to Hunter Biden, and not really conducting an investigation into Joe Biden, the connection there, they kind of did anyways, in a sense, and they did look into a potential, and they did ask about a potential of a connection there, and in so doing, once again revealed what so many other people have in the past, as we've been discussing this week, a lack of evidence for the corruption that Republicans continue to accuse Biden of. Then, as to the particular claim, as I referenced earlier, coming from these whistleblowers, that David Weiss, the U.S. attorney, and this investigation was impeded in some way because of who Hunter Biden was. Again, Hunter, or I should say, gosh, I'm all discombobulated, all these names. David Weiss, the U.S. attorney, denies this. And Jamie Raskin made this point.
Mr. Shapley, you testified that the critical moment in your decision to blow the whistle in the Hunter Biden investigation was the October 7th meeting, 2022, that you had with U.S. Attorney David Weiss. And up until that point, you say you were willing to chalk up the differences with prosecutors to the typical, quote, investigator versus prosecutor type thing, which is what I think this is all about. But you say on page 28 of your transcript, if I wasn't in the October 7th meeting, my red line might not have been crossed, and I think you reaffirmed that today. Now, as I understand it, what crossed your red line is that in that meeting, you understood Mr. Weiss to be saying that he did not have the authority to bring charges in D.C. or California without the approval of the U.S. attorneys for those districts. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. But in a letter that he sent to Chairman Jordan in June, U.S. Attorney Weiss stated, and I quote, "I have been granted ultimate authority over this matter, including responsibility for deciding where, when, and whether to file charges." He went on to explain that in considering charges in districts outside Delaware, usual DOJ practice would be, quote, to contact the U.S. Attorney's Office for the district in question and determine whether it wants to partner on the case. Now, if that office declined, he would request and be granted authority to bring the charge himself.
We'll stop it there. And we did cover that letter when he initially wrote it to Jim Jordan. But the whistleblower there, his red line, as it was called, that went beyond, in his mind, the normal kind of investigators wanting charges to be brought. They uncovered information, and the prosecutor knowing, well, but I would have to actually prove that case in a court of law, and no, I'm not going to bring those charges, I'm going to bring these, or I'm not going to bring any, or whatever. That normal conflict is perfectly acceptable and the complete norm, as was a point highlighted during this hearing as well. That it was more than that, is what this guy was saying, because of his impression that David Weiss at some point expressed his lack of an ability to make decisions on getting the special counsel status if he wanted, or bringing all the charges that he wanted in whatever jurisdiction that he wanted. And David Weiss has since said, I guess if that was your perception, not these exact words, but then you misread the vibes I was giving off, because no, I had complete and total authority. And this is a Trump appointed U.S. attorney who Biden explicitly, even though this isn't the norm, he totally could have gotten rid of him, kept this U.S. attorney in place, left over from the Trump administration, to make sure he didn't interfere with Hunter Biden's investigation because he knew it was going on. So keep the Trump appointee in power and don't interfere with that investigation. And still they're accusing Biden and his DOJ and Merrick Garland, all that, of interference. You really can't win for trying when it comes to the GOP and Democrats. So there's that. Yet another unsuccessful hearing for Republicans. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are able to be uploaded to the YouTube channel, plus get the bonus show on the weekends, you can do so by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. That's lukebeasleyshow.com/membership, and there's a link in the description.